Healthcare's digital front door has gotten a lot of attention recently. It came into focus during the COVID-19 pandemic and remains a priority as healthcare organizations struggle to bring patients back in for needed health services. Investing in the digital front door is a good thing for patients, clinicians, and staff. But there are literally hundreds of vendors that play in this space. So, what differentiates them? What features should you be looking for? And for vendors in this space, what will it take to stand out? KLAS Research is great at helping to answer these types of questions, and they recently teamed up with the Health Management Academy on a report on the digital front door. We reached out and have two of the report's authors with us on today's program. Hello and welcome to Swaay.Health, where we bring you the latest insights and interesting stories from the brightest minds in healthcare marketing. I'm Colin Hung, and joining me today on the program is Adam Cherrington, Vice President of Digital Health, and Dan Czech, Vice President of Insights, both from KLAS Research. They're going to help me dissect some of the interesting points from their recent report on the digital front door. So get ready to be inspired, learn some new tricks, and take your marketing game to the next level. Let's jump right in. Adam, Dan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
I'm excited today because we're going to dive into a new digital front door report that you came out with. Always interested in stuff that KLAS does, always high quality, but this one really caught my eye. Adam, can you give our audience a quick preview of what that report is?
Yes, so we partnered with the Health Management Academy, and they interviewed their audience and asked, hey, who are you thinking of when you think of digital front door? It's a topic that continues to come up. So taking their answers and supplementing it with performance data that KLAS has, we were able to just share what's top of mind for at least the members of that academy. And it's been a very interesting process.
So let me ask both of you this question. From a patient's perspective, what does a good, and I use air quotes there, good digital front door feel like?
We've all experienced some of those frustrations with the digital front door at whatever organization we receive our care from, whether it's a barrier to getting on a schedule or filling out your forms or repeating those forms. So what's interesting is KLAS has also done some patient-facing research over the past couple of years. And when you kind of compare that to what we're seeing in the digital front door space, the demand for consumerism and that experience you have with so many other industries is front and center in healthcare as well. Patients want to come in and schedule for a time that's convenient for them with the physician that they want to schedule with. They want a seamless process to pay their bill and to know exactly what they need to pay. You know, you think about that whole journey all the way up until receiving the care, and you seem to have a few more barriers in healthcare versus other industries that you interact with as a consumer or as a patient in this case.
And I want to add to that it's important to realize, to Dan's point, what the patient needs and want is different than what providers tend to focus on what they want for the reasons he just shared. So that's important. Just that distinction alone can help improve care. It's access, it's scheduling, it's intake, it's simple communication. We have so many examples of that outside of healthcare that our expectations as patients is absolutely growing.
You know, a related question to that is, is it fair, right, to hold healthcare to that same standard that maybe we experience as people with our banks, with airlines, with hospitality? I think some would say it is fair. I mean, that is what we experience elsewhere, and we should bring that into healthcare. I think others would say maybe it's a little bit unfair because those people have a very different financial model and a very, very different, as a consumer, I have a lot more choice over there. And in healthcare, I really don't. So What do you say to that? Do you think it's fair that we hold healthcare to this sort of standard that we see outside?
When you put on your patient hat, of course you think it's fair to have that experience, especially knowing you brought up the airline industry, the financial industry. Those are also highly regulated industries, and they found a way to still create a great experience for their customers. I fly Delta often, and I can go on and book my flight for the exact time, the exact seat that I want, and never have any hiccups with that experience. And I know I can show up the day of my flight, and everything's going to run smoothly. It's all contained in the app, and why can't I expect that with my healthcare organization? Now, when I put my healthcare leader hat on, I know how complex healthcare is, and it's not as easy as choosing a seat on an airplane. It's finding the right physician for the right type of care, not getting on the schedule of a specialist that maybe I don't need to be seen by. There's a lot of layers of complexity that are in healthcare that I don't think exist in other industries. So you kind of see both sides, I think, but at the end of the day, what we all want is to elevate the experience we have today to another level. And I think both provider organizations and patients can expect and see kind of a path to get there over the next few years.
I completely agree. Not only is it fair, I think at minimum, we should be able to do basic things that we can't do today. And there's wonderful exceptions to that comment. There are places where you can do self-scheduling. There are places where you can get communication from clinicians in a relative simple way, but those are the exceptions. And I think we should expect more. During the pandemic, everything went virtual, right? Well, not everything, but our primary basic services went virtual. So when my clinician told me a few months later, "Oh, you have to come in for that," I appropriately pushed back and said, "Actually, I don't think I do, because we've done this on a virtual care call." So I think we can and should expect more, even to get to an average baseline of just basic assistance. I'm currently trying to schedule an appointment. I think this specialty office called me 3 times today. I can't talk to them. I'm talking to Colin and Dan right now. So, but I could probably text them at some point if they would come to my needs. So, Colin, I think it is fair, and I think we should expect more.
I love that. Well, thank you for taking time to talk with us rather than talk with your specialist. Although I kind of feel bad now. But
it's not urgent. I'm okay. I'm
okay.
going to survive the day, but it could be easier.
So let me ask you guys this question. What should healthcare marketers and those involved with patient experience take away from this report?
Digital front door is such a widely used term, and it feels like it's spiking again. The past few months, we've had provider organizations come and say, "Hey, we need you to help us with this RFP." We've narrowed down to digital front door to select for our approach and strategy, but it means so many different things. I think what a marketer and vendor leader should take away is there's wide misunderstanding of what it can and probably does mean. There's some basics I think we're gravitating towards: access, things we've already mentioned on this webinar, but providers need guidance, and they need to understand what does a vendor offer, but more importantly, what does a vendor not offer. I think most healthcare organizations are told by vendor organizations, "Hey, we are a platform that can do anything." And I think providers roll their eyes a little bit and say, "Yeah, everybody tells me that, but what do I need?" Be the Sherpa to take me up the mountain and say, here's the equipment you need, here's the path you must take, and we're not even going to let you go down this other path. So there's wide disagreement out there of what it even means. So just really tight alignment of what a vendor offers and what objectives they're trying to help with should be communicated better.
I absolutely agree. I think there's a key principle here that Adam touched on lightly is, as an organization, making going out for RFP, making a selection of the different solutions out there in the industry, it's crucial to understand what problem or problems you're trying to solve up front. That'll narrow down the list of solutions that you may even want to consider. But I would also suggest that an organization that's considering a digital front door think not only of current state and current problems you're trying to solve, but what is the big picture that you may want to tackle 1, 2, 3 years down the road, and look at partners that may be able to fill a lot of those needs. There's not going to be one solution today that does everything you need. But there are a lot of solutions that offer a lot of different things. And that's something we saw in this research as these respondents from these 30 leading health organizations that shared their perspective with the Health Management Academy. There were a lot of solutions that they considered or saw as leaders in several different areas of the digital front door. So there are solutions that can meet a lot of needs, and having both a good understanding of current state and what you want to get to, as well as future state, I think is incredibly important.
Actually, that leads me to my next question, Dan. Like, in the report, there were over like 100 vendors in the digital front door space that were identified. How can organizations begin to narrow that down when they're looking for a solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the reasons why KLAS exists and why we try to do what we do. I know we're talking about this specific study, but just alongside this, KLAS published another piece of research called the Patient Engagement Ecosystem. And our whole purpose with this study was to understand from the vendor community, what are the patient engagement capabilities that they offer? So they shared with us their full suite of solutions around patient engagement. And so this helps. We like to talk about sorting the Lego drawer. This vendor has these types of Legos, and if this is my needs, this seems to be a vendor that can fit most of those needs. If I have a very targeted need, this is the list of vendors that meet that targeted need. So that's one resource that an organization could potentially use to narrow down that list. Other ways to approach this is, we often hear from organizations, and this won't surprise you, Colin, but we're going to look first to our EMR vendor and our patient portal solution. What do they offer, and how much of this can we get from the tech stack that we have in place today? And then where do we need to look for third-party solutions to augment where there may be weaknesses, or where maybe that only touches a certain portion of our patient base, and we want some consumer-centric solutions as part of our digital front door.
So let me ask this reverse question. If I'm one of those 100 vendors that are in this particular digital front door space, what can I do, or what would you recommend I do to stand out?
Well, I'll tell you what not to do. Don't come to your customers and say, hey, we're a platform that can do it all. We've already touched on that. Don't say that. And don't overemphasize the integration capabilities you have. One of my favorite provider quotes of all time was, this was at an event, a provider said to my face, hey, every time a vendor tells me they're experts on interoperability, I know the next words out of their mouth are a lie. Pretty bold statement. And of course they were being dramatic a little bit, but they're always told that everything will work perfectly. And yes, we can integrate with Epic every time, anytime. But guess what? It's super hard, and providers know that. So I guess if our advice to vendors is just be very clear what you don't offer. And we've kind of said that already, but that is kind of not the natural thought. You want to promote yourself in the best way, but providers deal with hundreds of vendors. They've seen all the great and terrible examples out there. I think it goes back to what Dan was saying. If a vendor can help an organization have a long-term vision and be very clear of where they are in that process, how much they can help and where they can't help today, maybe make recommendations. Hey, here's an important space that you must have solved that we don't cover. Here's some recommendations. I think that helps a vendor stand out. These are bright people that are solving complex problems. They've been in healthcare IT what's interesting is vendors and providers are starting to go on both sides of that discussion. It's not hard to find people that have been a provider, now work for a vendor, et cetera. So I think that's what I would recommend.
The only thing I would add to that is healthcare organizations are looking to solve problems as they engage with vendor partners. And so as you can tie, from a vendor perspective, if you can tie outcomes to what your solution does and then drive those outcomes for the organization, you become a lot stickier, especially in a world where the EHR vendors are continuing to broaden their portfolios and add additional functionalities that may even be functionalities that you offer today that maybe it wasn't a point of competition before, but now it is with those vendors, where you have a clear impact on the organization and clear outcomes you're driving. You become a lot more sticky at those organizations.
It's interesting to hear you both say that statement of you shouldn't try to be everything to everyone, because I think the natural tendency when you look at a report like this or any comparison out there, everyone wants to look where they're missing a check mark, right? Where am I not checking the box? And maybe I should fill that box, right? I think that's the sort of natural tendency of vendors. What you're saying though is don't do that. Like just focus where you're focused. If you focus on the pre-engagement capabilities, highlight that and stick to that. It's not necessary that you be everything to everyone.
Right. Most of the time, if you try to be everything to everyone, you're going to fall short of being great at what you could be.
If I was a CIO or a patient experience person or a marketer, how would you recommend I get started here in terms of looking at either replacing the current vendor I have or maybe implementing for the first time something in the digital front door space? Like, what would you recommend to me that I do as a first step?
Boy, that's a great question. I think it goes back to what Dan said about focus on the problems to solve, focus on that. Nobody wakes up and says, I need to buy more technology today, but they are fighting fires left and right in a complex, challenging environment. And by the way, my heart goes out to these providers. Every year it feels like we say, wow, healthcare is harder than it's ever been. And then 2021 comes and 22 comes. It's just, it's ongoing. So they have an incredibly complex situation they're trying to solve. So I've seen some really thoughtful roadmaps where organizations say, hey, this is where we're going to solve today's problems, but we're thinking about the intermediate and the long-term focus. And really just being thoughtful about that instead of chasing the next bright, shiny object, right? Insert favorite quote about AI right here. Yes, it's impactful. Yes, it's important. Who's doing what with that? And I know there's examples of things that are growing there. We could have a whole discussion on that. But I think you hold to your vision, you hold to principles, and you bring partners along that can help you get there.
And I think it's incredibly important for those organizations as they're stepping into this and developing a roadmap that they listen to the voice of the patient in this. That's should be your North Star, especially when we're talking about digital front door and access to care and those things. What are the roadblocks they're experiencing? What are the biggest things that they wish they could do with your organization that they can't do today? Find their frustration points and go and create a frictionless process for them.
Colin, can I double click on that? Because that is so critical. Most organizations do not involve patients at all. And we've talked about how their needs and perspective is different than what providers' needs are. It's so ironic that we don't include the patient. And this is something Dan and I are extremely passionate about. We have our own podcast about this topic, amplifying the voice of the patient. And we're starting to interview patients at health systems to ask about technology needs and preferences and gaps. So it's absolutely critical. If I'm a health system or I'm a vendor leader, I make sure there's always a patient in the room or many patients in the room.
Adam, Dan, where can people go to download this report?
It's on the KLAS website. You can go to KLASresearch.com under reports, KLAS research. We're certainly happy to talk to anybody that has questions about it, but we're happy to share it. That's the mission of KLAS, is to try and improve healthcare by giving insights that are accurate and impartial and helpful. So we're happy to share it with people that are interested.
Well, Adam, Dan, thank you so much for being on the program today and for sharing all this wonderful information. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks so much, Colin.
Yeah,
Appreciate your
You're
work.
welcome.
I want to thank Adam and Dan for spending time with us today and for sharing their thoughts on the digital front door. My key takeaway is that vendors should resist the urge to be all things to all people, and that it's actually a good thing not to fill in all of those empty boxes on the feature list. Another key takeaway is that for provider organizations, they should really get clear on their goals before looking at technologies, because the number of choices is just overwhelming. And hey, if you enjoyed this interview as much as I did, please like and subscribe. Also, head on over to Swaay.Health. That's Swaay with 2 A's, .health. That's where you'll find more great content like this. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you on the next video.